Okay, so me and Miss Chambers are here. We are talking about math disabilities. So I had to find a few links and summarize them. So that's what this artifact is me summarizing the three articles, and I've got the links there. So what I learned, what I took away from this is the different types of learning disabilities that our kids struggle with. Um, I didn't realize, I guess, how deep it was. One of the examples was they struggle with the symbolic numbers, like Arabic numbers. Um, I didn't know that. Like, I just thought we don't like math. We don't want to do these numbers. Why are there letters in math? Like, I guess for me, I just took it very high level. But it was talking about different conditions that the kids may that have them feeling a certain way about math. One, we kind of talked about this the other day, the language barrier. And I remember last year I had a student in my class who didn't speak English, and she came late.
Yeah.
And so I met with her one on one, and of course this was virtual, but even in our little breakout room, I'm talking to her and she's just saying okay, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So then, like, she was in class for a week and a half. My co-teacher met with her and she said, yeah, she doesn't speak English. And I'm like, she has to speak English. I had a whole meeting with her and I told her about the course. I told her about what we were going to do. I was like, we had a conversation, and then I thought back, I was like, we didn't have a conversation. I talked and she said okay. Right? And um so that's why she wasn't engaged. She didn't understand what the heck I was talking about, which, why didn't I know this child didn't speak English? But whatever. So the language barriers was one. High anxiety is another that just shuts them down. Some of the visual things in math is confusing for them. Um, they can't read. We talked about that recently, so that's an issue. I had a student who was very engaged in class, and then would give me these random answers on the assignment, and I'm like, is he being smart? I took it kind of personal, like, because he is engaged in class, he couldn't read the questions. Um. So yeah, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of factors into it, and I think as high school teachers, we twofold. We get the brunt end of it, but then we get the biggest fall is on us, because by the time they get to us, it's now they have to earn credits for graduation, and so much pressure can be put on us for things that have been building up for years. And it's like, if it was recognized from early on, some of those disabilities and concerns from early on, rather than pushing them, or, oh, they're just lazy. Like, I think often the excuse is, oh, they're just lazy, or they don't want to do, or they're constantly checked out, when a lot of times it's really they don't know or may not see it in the way that we are presenting it. And often it is recognized, or there's a plan put in place too late, because when you're 13, 14, 15 years old, you've been so set in a mindset of being defeated in math, and so much build up trauma of how math is, to the point that your go to is to check out. So I definitely see how a lot of these can play in. I wish there was a way that there was more accountability held in the elementary and middle school levels, to where we can help elevate and support and guide, rather than us being the first time often that these are addressed, to know how to change and alter.
I agree with that, because some of the things that I was reading that the kids are struggling with, it definitely had a lot to do with the foundation. A lot of the things that we do in algebra, they struggle with it because they don't even know their multiplication facts. They don't know the simple, basic things. And I know last year I talked a lot about, okay, this slope intercept form, it's not going away. We're going to build on this. Well, you can't build on a foundation if it's not there in the first place.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
And it was talking about, in one of the articles, about kids going into 5th grade already having large deficits, and it just continues, that huge lack.
It's like, where, and for me, it's like, where do we draw the line and say, okay, how do we help support to where those gaps don't keep getting bigger, but we recognize that the gaps are there and deficits are there, but we continue to support to where they either stay about the same or get smaller, not continuously get bigger just because it's being pushed off to the next person, to the next person, to the next person. Like, where does that come from? Or, like, I often hear, oh, well, they can't read. And it's like, is it that they can't read or nobody has taken the time to ensure that they learn how to read? Because I just have a hard time believing that we assign kids to gen ed classes with co-taught or sped services, but they're still in a gen ed class and they are genuinely incapable of reading. How do you expect them to be able to perform on standards-based learning and not modified content when they genuinely can't read or read to comprehend things? That doesn't seem like it's fair and pushing to support them in the right way. And then if it finds out early on that it really is a block to where they genuinely cognitively cannot grasp being able to read, why is it not that they are put on an alternative track towards graduation rather than us keep pushing towards graduation rates and keeping them in these gen ed classes that are way too beyond their comprehension?
So, from a high school math teacher, what have you encountered from a student where there was a huge gap? What did you personally do with them?
Normally what happens is they're probably in a co-taught class. And so I work alongside my co-teacher, and we find different ways to give them that information from that gap, while also teaching lesson. Like for factoring polynomials, it requires you to know your factors. Well, kids may not know their factors off the bat. Some of the kids struggle with factoring because they don't know their factors. And it can take an impossible amount of time to figure out which factor works on a calculator. So we just give them a factor sheet to get them to memorize and see kind of what numbers go with which factors would work. Like if you have a number with 13 and the middle number, the end number is 12 and the middle number is 13. Well, the numbers have to be 12 and 1. I see that naturally because 12 plus 1 is 13 and 12 times 1 is 12. But they may not naturally see that. So they may take their time on a calculator, or they can use a factor sheet. They know they're looking for 12. Okay, so is 4 plus 3 going to give you 13? No. Is da-da-da. So we kind of merge those gaps, and that has helped. And we do all kind of different cheat sheets or visuals to kind of help support kids there. Also, because there's other kids that may have gaps, if there's a new concept, like kids should know the distributed property by the time they come to me, because the 7th and 8th grade curriculum teaches it. But instead of assuming, what we do is have a small mini 5 to 7 minute lesson reminding them of what the distributed property is before we go into solving equations with distributed property.
That makes sense. Okay. So it says, I wrote these questions earlier. How can I improve my ability to recognize the differences between a student who's struggling with math and a student who may have a math disability?
I think you start to see it in like we do formative assessments on a daily basis. Now, people think formative assessments has to be a whole elaborate exit ticket. It doesn't. But every day I kind of try to assess what kids have learned from the lessons, and then try to do a quiz every Friday. normally kids who are struggling math, they can give you some of the procedures, and may mess up on like algebraic pieces or things like that. But kids with a math disability, it's all jumbled up. Like it may not, none of it may make sense at all. And so it's like the feedback you give to the struggling student is like, okay, here are some of the procedural things, or here are some of the ways we can kind of work with this. Versus the kids who are struggling math probably need to be retaught the lesson during the intervention time and presented in a different way.
Okay, that makes sense. The last question, what teaching strategies or habits should I develop now so I can better support students with math disabilities in a way that feels both effective and equitable?
Like, one, helping promote advocacy. I think it's hard for kids to ask, but some things that I do is like, it can be nonverbal, or I rotate and kind of check in and see, and I try to see early on like who is not picking up, who's not, because the earliest I can catch on to that, the more I can support, the better I can support early on. And then I tell people all the time, use your co-teacher. We are not the SPED experts, we are the math expert. But 9 times out of 10, kids who have a math disability are in a math co-taught class.
Okay.
And so a lot of those things that are in their IEPs or different stuff that can seem overwhelming to try to do, the SPED co-teacher
Is there for
will definitely support, or even show you little mini things that you can put into your presentations and your lessons that would encompass this for all people, but it definitely supports those accommodations. And I've constantly said that to everybody, like, use the SPED expert, because like it really does go a long way, and you don't have to recreate or feel overwhelmed, because they really do find simple ways to support. I mean, my biggest aha moment was my first year. It's like teaching kids how to do some of the mental math, applying it as money. Like, rather than saying what's 5 times 2, be like, okay, well, like, if I have $5 and I want to double it or times it by 2, and they're like, oh, okay, $5, take 5 more dollars, 10. So like they correlate to money because everybody want money. So that was just an easy way I was taught to kind of know a few things. So they do help and support you.
So, do you feel like, and something you said, I don't remember what made me think about this, do you feel like sometimes the students retain the information or understand the information if it comes from a peer?
So it can depend. So like I do rely heavily, I promote student teachers all the time. One, a lot of times when students can feel somebody on their level as being relationable, because when you promote student teachers, those kids in the classroom are really trying to help. It's not like they're bringing anybody down. It's really friendly, and 9 times out of 10 they're already friendly with the people in the classroom.
Yeah.
And so kids can tend to be more comfortable with someone that is within the same age group as them than a teacher who they see as like authority or like lecturing and stuff like that. So I definitely think it can expose them in different ways. And I'm not one that's, oh, it's just one way of teaching. I've had so many kids that see things in so many different ways that it can help somebody else in a way that I just did not feel comfortable teaching. Because like we teach based on the curriculum, and sometimes we can, if we have time, which a lot of times you don't in co-taught classes, to have those conversations of how to have aha moments or different ways to think about it. But when that practice come about and you could let them collaborate and stuff, you get to see how kids will say, hey, you could have actually done this way and that way, or you don't have to distribute if it's divisible by the number that you like, those different things. And it's like, well, what's divisible? And now you hear them having conversations on like, well, it actually means, okay, if this number can go into this number equally, which means not without a decimal, then it's like, oh, that's cool. And like you hear all kind of like moments. It's like, we know that, but we don't teach it that way because it can sometimes get lost in translations.
That makes sense. Okay. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you appreciate me.